Okay, so, I was correct. I'd like to start by saying I was correct in my assumption that of all of the things that they would probably do to Portal Keeper, I did a video titled Demon Hunter, Now That I've Got Your Attention. And it was the announcement of update 20.0, and I'm really excited for this update. This obviously dropped, I think, yesterday, but I didn't have time yesterday to talk about it, and I thought that if I waited for long enough today, and it might even come out, like, another thing to talk about might come out, like, later today, but I wanted to do this now since I do have the time. And if you want, you can go watch that video where I very succinctly talk about Portal Keeper, but I will probably just do that again in this video. If you don't already understand how my channel works, or most of my videos, if you don't already understand how most of my videos work, you don't need to watch this video. There's nothing interesting that's going to be going on the screen. You can totally use this as a podcast and just like listen to all my thoughts on this. And I think that all of the changes that they did are for the best. I trust that a lot of people will say, I'm gonna quit the game. They nerfed Monk. I spent so much time on Monk. I'm gonna quit the game because they keep nerfing Portal Keeper, and this is dumb. And this game is so pay to win, and it's so dumb. And Inquisitor and I used to use my Inquisitor, and they nerfed it, and then I tried to find a new way to use it with Portal Keeper, and then they nerfed it again, and this game is dumb, and I'm gonna quit this game. I trust that if you go on enough, like, just go on the Reddit, the Rush Royale Reddit, it's great. If you ever want, like, negative content to, like, listen to, it's great. So they nerfed a lot of things that, okay, so when this entire, like, when they gave Blooming Dash Blade Dancer, like, a chance, right? That update, when they added Blade Dancer talents, I stated that we currently exist in the infinite damage, infinite effect meta, because that's literally what this is. It's whether or not, like, every deck that you run is based on whether or not you can get rid of effects and how much damage can you do based on the unit. And what I mean by that is, does your unit have increasing damage through a passive ability? I'm not talking about mana upgrade. I'm not talking about leveling. I'm not talking about getting it from 1 to 7. Every unit can do that. I'm talking about Inquisitor of Light getting a passive bonus from killing a boss. I'm talking about Knight of Darkness getting a passive bonus by eating other Inquisitors. I'm talking about Floral Frenzy. I'm talking about Blooming Dash. I'm talking about Robot merging and getting to a specific threshold. Those things that passively increase your damage over the course of the game, where it's a game where each of the monsters increase their damage over the course of the game, is going to take you farther into the game, as opposed to anything else that doesn't have increasing damage over the course of the game. It was my initial reasoning for thinking that Enchant Sword is not that great, because I thought that you could just keep building stacks, and then that would obviously make Enchant Sword incredibly broken. But the amount of bonus that you get from an Enchant Sword is just so much greater than, say, a Knight statue or a banner or a like a chemist or something, because it's giving it to all of your units that should be increasing in damage through a passive ability, at which point those units are becoming better, and then at that point you can actually merge out your Enchant Swords, and then also your Enchant Swords are an attacking unit, so if you were running a Chemist or a Trapper, it would be harder for you to win the first couple of rounds. I'm getting off topic here. So we exist in an infinite damage effect heavy meta. And so what started to happen was every single thing that could get rid of effects. That started running the meta, and that started determining whether or not you could fight against the other person. So if you could Portal Keeper your unit, that's great, but then the Portal Keeper is not attacking, so that's kind of a detriment, right? With Inquisitor, Knight of Light Inquisitor, with Knight of Darkness Inquisitor, I'll talk about Knight of Light in a second. With Knight of Darkness Inquisitor, the shield that was at that time an infinite shield, like you could just, if you didn't have another Inquisitor on the field, your shield could not be broken. With Knight of Darkness Inquisitor, you were protected for the entire game from every effect. That included bosses, that included the Red Lion, that included your opponent trying to affect you with Shaman or Witch or Enchant Sword. None of that worked, right? With Blooming Dash Blade Dancer, if you did get affected, you could move it and then the effect would go away. Or you could shield it and the effect would go away. Or the effect wouldn't even happen, right? With Monk, with Tranquility, if you got a field full of monks, when a boss round hit, you could just hit the button and delete bosses because your entire field is gaining damage. They're attacking faster, and they have a shield for what is essentially, if you can insta kill every boss, you have an entire shield for a triple boss round. Monk was the best deck to run, other than the infinite Portal Keeper, Knight of Darkness deck. Because when it mattered, not only were these things getting increasing damage over the course of the game, or already had way too much damage, which is Monk, but you also had an infinite shield for the entire match. And it was basically, it basically just became who can deal more increasing damage over the course of the game. And it was one of those two decks. If you ran up against one of those two decks, you just went for an infinite amount of rounds. And you could just go for an infinite amount of rounds, because both decks, like if you had two Knight of Darkness Inquisitor decks with Portal Keeper, you would just go for like 40 minutes of, 40 minutes of gameplay until one of you eventually got Tribunal, I want to say, or Monkey Kinged. Like eventually, the stacks wouldn't stack fast enough, but that's like way, way, way late in the game. And that's why they needed to do all of the nerfs that they're going to talk about. Those were the two dominating decks. It was Knight of Darkness Inquisitor with Portal Keeper, because you could infinitely keep switching it, and it would be protected from basically everything. Or Monk, which had really high damage to begin with, and then you could infinite shield yourself for an entire triple boss round. So all of the things that whenever that happens in a meta, whenever those are the only two decks that you can run and people have those two decks, there's no reason to build anything else. And they have to change something, because that can't exist. So here we go. Bruisers, Awakening Rage, and Furious Brotherhoods. Apparently there was a problem in calculation, and the attack speed is correctly calculated when collecting a certain number of clovers. That's just like a hidden thing that we never knew about, and that they never really addressed, and now they're just addressing it now. They're like, yeah, you should have been dealing more damage with your bruisers, but you weren't, so we're gonna fix that. Also, the change that they made, they do this every so often when a unit isn't performing as well as other legendaries. What they're doing is it's going to deal more damage at level 7, which is 112 to 132, which is huge. That 20-point boost with every bonus that you're getting with your with your bruisers, it's gonna show. Damage increase with level is now lower from 28 to 20%. The win rate is from level 9 to level 15 is 45 to 55. With the advent of talents, the unit has become quite powerful and at the same time remains easy to use. We're buffing the unit at starting levels and weakening damage increase per level to adjust its abilities. This is gonna make it to where it's as good as it was prior to it getting talents. It was always really good, really early on, and it wasn't as great late game. And now it's kind of just like in the current meta, it's just kind of okay in the early game, and it's kind of better at late game. And now it's gonna be pretty good early game and then pretty good late game, which is where you want pretty much every legendary unit to be, especially if it has talents. Because if it has talents at level 9 and it's not doing as much as like a level 9 cultist, then there's a problem. And that I like that they're addressing that, and they're making it so that it does more damage at lesser levels, and it's gonna do a little bit less damage at higher levels if you've already maxed one out or if you've had one that's that high. And so that's kind of a nerf, but it's also a buff to people who are just getting it, which I think is good. Robot, the tough tuning and arms race, increase the maximum number of parts to 80. I believe the maximum number of parts before was 40. So I think that this is a good change. You're allowing a robot player to go beyond 40, which was already a bonus because you were being able to go beyond 20. Being able to go beyond 40, it's a lot of merges. But I trust that the amount of percentage that you're getting per merge beyond 40, and if you actually get to 80, it's going to be comparable to other, like Blooming Dash Blade Dancer. It's not going to be as easy, obviously. It's going to be really, really tough to get those merges. But the fact that they're even thinking about doing that and making it go for even longer is better. I feel like maybe they think that if they make it infinite, like a Blooming Dash Blade Dancer or like an Inquisitor, Knight of Darkness Inquisitor is restricted by the amount of bosses, and the bonus isn't as high. Knight of Light is. Knight of Darkness, it's restricted by the amount of summon-ins that you can potentially do over the course of the game, because you have to keep summoning in things, and sometimes those won't be Inquisitors, and so then you'll have to summon in more things, and your summon-in cost will keep growing and growing and growing. Blooming Dash Blade Dancer, again, which is why I love it, that's infinite. It's just based on the amount of time that a Portal Keeper takes to recharge, which is probably why they changed it from the 2-second to the 5-second, because that is the only thing that restricts it from gaining infinite power. Robot's pretty tough, because I think eventually you will get just so many things on your field at random levels. Like all the things that you will have, like, because you're running Harlequin, you're running Mime, you're probably running Clock, right? You're gonna get like really awkward levels. You're gonna get like a 1, 2, 3 Clock, and then like have like 2 level 7 robots, and then you're gonna have like a level 6 robot, and then you're gonna have like that you don't want to get rid of, and then you're gonna have like a 1, 2, 3, 4, what's it called, like Mime, right? You could potentially get that so like I think making it go to 80 is helpful for the robot deck. I don't necessarily know if that's going to make it better, because I don't know how many people were getting to 40 to begin with. Robot still suffers from the problem of not being able to debuff itself, which means you have to run Enchant Sword with Approving Look so that you can get rid of debuffs. And so then that becomes a problem as well. Because despite all of these changes to that I'm going to eventually talk about, despite all these changes to cards getting nerfed, you still have to worry about the same amount of debuffs. Like, they're not getting rid of Virus, they're not getting rid of Dark Priest, they're not getting rid of King Pudding, they're not changing how bosses work. They're not changing Enchant Sword, they're not changing Shaman, they're not changing Witch. You still will have to, like, understand that it's still an infinite damage meta, and they're making it much less easy for you to cleanse things, or for you to be shielded, straight shielded from things. And I think that Robot is, I don't know. I think that anything without a cleanse and having to rely on Approving Look and Enchant Sword, I think that's a big detriment to the deck. And I still think that if you can't immediately cleanse things, you will eventually just lose no matter how much damage you're doing. I feel like if your Dark Priest gets, or if your level 7 Robot gets Dark Priested really late in the game, you just die next round. If it gets King Pudding, you just die next round. If you can't immediately cleanse it, because other decks can immediately cleanse it. And they will just outpower you based solely on that. Even if they're not, even if you killed the boss quicker, but the effect still happens, it doesn't matter, because in the next round, when the other deck can immediately cleanse all of that stuff, you're at a disadvantage now. And I don't know. I think it's a good start to changing Robot, but I think they need to introduce some kind of unit that allows you to cleanse things, and at a more efficient rate than Approving Look on Enchant Sword, to make anything that doesn't already have a cleanse even kind of meta. Like, when you have a Spirit Master that has the ability to just upgrade for 500 points and cleanse everything at a 45 or 50%, at a 50% rate, like, what other deck should you run? Like, why run a Robot deck? I don't know. Or why run a Demon Hunter deck? I mean, we don't know Demon Hunter talents, but I mean, that's the reason why Demon Hunter fails right now. It doesn't have a cleanse. Like, yes, you can build, like, a field of a whole bunch of Demon Hunters, but then what? Like, once you get King Pudding, like, you're dead. You have to be able to cleanse in this meta, because if you can't, decks just don't work. Gargoyle, they're completely changing, and I don't really understand how they're wording it. I think this is one of those things that we're just gonna have to see in game. I think Gargoyle was always really strong, like really early on. If you heard my story, when Witch first came out, and that was running the meta, people were just playing Witch decks. People were just running like Trickster, Shaman, Witch, Harlequin, Mime, and a damage dealer. And people were just trying to like witch you out of the game, because really early on with Witch, they had the ability to do that. They had the ability to attach Witch to literally just one attacking unit, and that attacking unit was dealing so much damage that your other attacking units couldn't keep up with it. They changed the numbers, they changed the functionality of Shaman, and they nerfed like a bunch of things, because again, that was the meta at the time. But when that was the meta, I was playing Gargoyle, and I really loved running Gargoyle because it was so funny. But they're changing the entire functionality of Gargoyle, in the same way that they changed the functionality of Cultist and how Cultist works. You used to be able to mana upgrade it, and now you have the 4 squares, obviously, that sacrifice Cultists. I like when they do that to cards. Like, they completely just change the functionality of how it works. They kind of did that for Blade Dancer. Because now with Blade Dancer talents, with Floral Frenzy and Blooming Dash, you don't have to have them not touching each other. You can still have them touching each other. I did and if your question is like, oh, but if you're running Floral Frenzy, you can't have them touching each other. It's like, yes, you can. I ran a video, and it's called the most unhinged Blade Dancer setup. And I thought that if you like set up Blade Dancers like a monk deck, if that would work, and it totally works. Blade Dancer might have lower attack speed, but that's only because the Floral Frenzy hasn't activated, and once it does activate, it has the attack speed of what it was previously. And and it's not based on them not touching. And then Blooming Dash, you're obviously controlling when they go into Blade Dancer mode. But with Gargoyle, it says change the unit's basic mechanic. Now the Gargoyle form does not depend on the merge rank, and it can immediately appear on the field in the stone form, giving adjacent normal gargoyles an AoE attack. Also, stone gargoyles no longer apply a debuff shield to adjacent gargoyles. I don't understand how this works. It sounds like it works in the same way that like Night of Light used to work, or how Night of Light used to work, where Night of Light, the way that it used to work was you had a percentage chance. Here we go. It's kind of like how Rogue works, or Alchemist. How you have a percentage chance of getting a Magisterum on Alchemist, or you have a percentage chance of getting a Shinobi for Rogue. I think you're going to have a percent chance of getting a Stone Gargoyle that you can then build around. It'll still be at like level 1, and it'll just do nothing. And you'll probably have a lower chance of getting that. That you can then build around, and then all of your other gargoyles will just normal attack, so that you can level those up. Obviously, this is how I'm picturing it working, and if they do it like this, I think it'll make Gargoyle a functional unit. Gargoyle's problem when I was running it was Tribunal. That was its biggest problem. It was getting to like a level 2 gargoyle, right? As a stone gargoyle, and then that never had the ability to get affected, which is why I used to love running it with Shaman, or running it against Witch and Shaman, because if it targeted the center, it was just a waste, and then you would build level 3s around it, and then you would have a level 3 Portal Keeper and just win the game like that, because anytime they would target the level 3s, you would just switch it, but the only reason why you died was because of Tribunal. Because if you had a bunch of level 3s and they got Tribunaled, you'd have a bunch of level 2s that do nothing. And that was its biggest problem. I think if they change it to where you have a percentage chance of getting a Stone Gargoyle that then powers up your adjacent ones, and is always, it doesn't do anything. It just sits on the field and it powers up, but you don't get them very often as well, because it becomes the percent chance thing. So you don't need it necessarily, because all of your gargoyles you can power up and do whatever with it. But when you do get it, it acts like a great knight statue, like a perfect version of a knight statue, but you also don't need to run another card like a knight statue. I think that's good. I think all of that is good. The Gargoyle is considered quite a fun and unusual unit, but the complexity of its mechanic makes it difficult to use at a low rating and reduces its effectiveness at a higher one. We've reworked its mechanics, adding more control and making it easier to use different forms. I think that it's good. I think that if it works how I think that it would work, I think that's good. But again, like, we're just gonna have to see. They say that it's less effective at lower ranking, and that's because if you had to keep merging, and you merge two things and it becomes a level 2 gargoyle, if you merge it out and it becomes a level 3 gargoyle but it's in the wrong spot, that becomes awkward. And it only works if you have Dryad and Harlequin, or if you have Dryad. You had to control everything. And then again, like I said, if you got Tribunal, you just died. Defensive mechanics. To better balance aggressive and passive game tactics, we're refining our approach to defensive game mechanics. The change will come gradually and will be aimed at weakening the effectiveness of defensive mechanics, as aggressive strategies are currently the least popular among players. And what they mean by that is, it is better to have a lesser damage unit, because of its defensive mechanics, than it is to have what might be a better unit because it doesn't. Bruiser could potentially be really good, but the cleanse mechanic is really iffy. Demon Hunter is potentially really, really good, but because it has no defensive mechanics, it's not good. Corsair could probably be really good, but it has no defensive mechanics. We support the greatest variety of strategies and playstyles, but do not plan to kill units, so we will make changes gradually and carefully monitor their consequences. So Monk, Tranquility, which used to give you the entire shield through an entire boss round, it is now going to cleanse negative effects. So you activate it and you cleanse your field, but you don't have the shield. And that's a huge, huge thing. Not having the shield for a triple boss round is giant. Like, it forces Monk players to not just get a full board of Monks and a Zeus and win, because that's what they were doing before. And there was no way to stop them. They eventually got however many Zeus tiles they had at level 7 Monks, and then they had the rest of their board that they could, over the course of the early game, merge up, and then they had an infinite shield for a triple boss round. Not having the shield for a boss round is huge. That means that it can get Dark Priested. It can get, no, because then it'll cleanse. I guess it has the potential to get Tribunaled if they can't kill it fast enough, which will eventually, once it starts going into a later game, they can get Tribunaled, they can get Warlocked, they can get Assassined, right? Once it starts going into late game and they can't just auto kill bosses, that's good. Because if not, it was just not being affected by anything. So even though they'll be able to like cleanse a King Pudding or a Dark Priest, they will not be able to stop an Assassin or a Warlock or a Tribunal potentially. And that'll make games not go for 40 minutes. So I think, see, if you wanted games to go for like a shorter amount of time, if you wanted to shorten the amount of time, it's not adding more and more bosses per boss round. Like, you know, not going to 4 bosses and 5 bosses, right? Because that seems like the eventuality of what they're doing. Like, like we had, you know, single bosses, and then they were like, we're gonna add double bosses because that's gonna be crazy. And it's like, and then when they added triple bosses, their reasoning was because they didn't want games to go for that long. And games are still going for that long because more talents are being introduced, more things are being introduced to give you an increased crit chance. And games are just going for that long anyway. If they really didn't want games to go for long, they would just delete every single way to cleanse. And there would be short games everywhere. Because if you can't cleanse, and you can't get rid of things, you have to merge them out. And then it becomes, ta-da, a merge game. Because at its current state, it's not a merge game. Like, it's detrimental to you to merge out your units. It's better for you to just keep one unit on the board and just power the shit out of it. This game is not a merge game. It's get, you know, Scrapper and Dryad and cleanse your unit and power up your unit with an enchant sword and power up or depower their units with Chemist and Trapper and power and cleanse your unit with its effect and increase your unit's power with its effect. And, you know, like, just get a level 7 Dark Shield, Dark Inquisitor, and a Portal Keeper, you know, like, and we'll talk about that. But if they wanted to, like, shorten games, if that was really what they wanted to do, they would just remove every way to cleanse. They would give you the ability to power things up, but if it got Dark Priested, you would just die, and you'd have to merge it out. You could never get like a level 7, because then you would just put yourself at an extreme disadvantage if it got King Puddinged. And I think gameplay would forever change. If like, you wouldn't even need triple bosses. You would start dying at double bosses. Like high level people would start dying at like double bosses. So I think they're doing something to try to shorten games. But you're still gonna get pretty long games because you can still cleanse, and cleansing is being able to cleanse is what's going to keep you playing in the long game. It's not the shield. The shield is a step though, because they had to make a step. But here we go. Cultist cleansing sacrifice. They changed the number of cleansed cultists from 3 to 1. Now that's huge. Cultist was cleansing 3 things every time a thing got sacrificed, and that meant that, like Inquisitor and like Spirit Master, you were basically just able to cleanse everything very quickly, and that's why Cultist became very meta. The ability to only cleanse 1 is huge, because you have, what is it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 on a single setup T, 6, 7, 8, 6, 7, 8 on a double setup T, and only being able to cleanse 1 cultist when you're getting like, you know, double hit Dark Priested, or King Pudding, right? Because you had the ability to cleanse everything. If you got Red Guide, you could cleanse that. If you got like Witched, you could cleanse that. When a shaman like was gonna like do the timer and hit you, you could cleanse that. And cleansing 3 things at a time was crazy. I mean, it wasn't any more crazy than Inquisitor being able to sacrifice sacrifice an Inquisitor and cleanse everything, or a Spirit Master. It's the reason why I think Spirit Master is so good. Spirit Master, all it needs to do is press a button and cleanse everything, or 45%, 50% chance of cleansing everything. And if it doesn't, press it again. Mana, you obtain so much in this game, especially in the late game, which is when it would matter. And so changing this from 3 to 1 is going to drastically affect cultist decks. I think this is probably the biggest nerf. It doesn't feel like the biggest nerf, but I think this is the biggest nerf. Portal Keeper no longer grants a shield to the teleported unit and only clears debuffs. So the way that they worded this, they said that you will still be able to clear debuffs from getting shamaned. So when you get shamaned, and if your Blade Dancer gets shamaned, right, and it does the counter, that counts as a debuff, and so you can still switch it, and that debuff will go away. So it wasn't the shield that was protecting it. It's the debuff. It is a shaman debuff. So that's good. This is gonna change games a lot, and I already predicted this in my other video. If you haven't looked at it, you can. Essentially what I was saying was that I think that they're going to, I was pretty sure that they were definitely going to nerf Portal Keeper, and I was pretty sure that they were either going to take away the ability to the shield or the debuff. It was either going to not be able to cleanse, or it was not going to be able to be shielded, because both of those effects are bonuses to what it technically should be doing, which is just moving things. It doesn't need to have the other things. Technically, both of the other things sound like a talent that it should have. And in my video, I said that I'm pretty sure that they were probably going to get rid of both things. So the fact that they only got rid of one thing is great, because when Portal Keeper gets talents, if they add back that like the max talent is a shield, then you just get regular Portal Keeper again. I think that this change is necessary. I think it's fine. I don't think it breaks the game. I think the fact that they left you its ability to get rid of a debuff is huge, because they could have gotten rid of both things and just treated it like how they treated Bombardier. And they were just like, yeah, that those 2 bonus things that it does, that it should never have done in the first place. Yeah, we're going to add that in talents in some future update. And we're not going to tell you when that update is. But yeah, for now, it's just going to move things. So it can still move things because it's a Portal Keeper, but it doesn't do all of those bonus things that make it super broken. The shield is not going to protect you from Tribunal anymore. It's not going to protect you from getting Warlocked, because if you try to, you can still move it, but if a Warlock targets your unit and you decide to Portal Keeper it, your Portal Keeper is going to die. So it's pretty big. Like, it's a pretty big change. Or if it gets Assassined and you tried to switch it. Technically, if Shaman targets it, okay, so it depends on how they decide to word Shaman. Is Shaman targeting the square that it's on, or is it targeting the unit? Because if it targets, actually, you know what? I think they go into that. You can still remove debuffs like Shaman's downgrade. Oh, okay, yeah. So I wasn't sure if Shaman targets the square or if it targets the unit. Because if it targeted the square, even when you switched it, it would still eat whatever was on the square. But it's saying that Shaman's downgrade. Yeah, so if your unit gets Shaman, you can still switch it. It still counts as a debuff. The debuff would go away. Both units would be safe. Or Virus's infection, but keeping a permanent shield for the Dark Knight will no longer work. I think it's fine. I think cleansing is what we wanted anyway. It's gonna give you some like really awkward, do I want to Portal Keeper this moment? Like when you go up against, like going up against Warlock and Assassin, is gonna be a lot different. It's gonna be a bigger kind of decision-making process. Because if your Warlock targets Blooming Dash Blade Dancer, if you can't kill it, do you want to sacrifice your Portal Keeper? You probably don't. But also sacrificing your Blooming Dash or your Blade Dancer that has 10 stacks, that's pretty big. But yeah, like I think it's a good mechanic change. I think it was necessary. I think that Portal Keeper, as I've been saying, since the start of my YouTube channel, it's the best thing in this game because it does way too much. And I think they finally realized that it does way too much. I think when they add talents for Portal Keeper, they're probably going to add the ability back. They're going to give you the choice to use a shield ability. Or they're going to make it the 15 ability. If they made it the 15 ability and gave you 3 other abilities, that would be crazy. But I think they're going to add it back once it gets talents, because eventually it's going to get talents, and eventually it was going to become even more broken than what it currently was. And I've been waiting my entire life for Portal Keeper talents. But I think this is a good enough change. It's going to definitely change a lot of games, and I'm excited to see how it does. Inquisitor Knight of Light now correctly takes 2.5 damages per stack. I suppose it was supposed to be even stronger than it currently is, so good luck with that. Demonologist fixed a bug where the player received mana from summoning enemy Demonologist monsters. That's just a bug fix. I've never encountered that. Priestess Power of Light, the damage now currently correctly increases when gaining mana. I don't think enough people played Priestess to care about that. Enchant Sword, Ancient Magic, fix a bug where the Ancient Sword would now transfer orbs when merged with another sword. I don't think enough people play the Ancient Sword option. I think people use it as a buff for their own units. But if you did, there you go. Boreas Sleep Arrows. This is pretty big. Fix the duration of enemy unit speed decreases in PvP and allied unit speed increase in PvE. I don't know if they're fixing the duration of enemy or the speed decrease as being higher or lower. I don't know what was wrong with it before. I don't think enough players play it. But I think that the Clock Boreas deck is really fun. Even though I don't have all the talents, and like you kind of have to have that maxed out for it to even kind of work. And it only kind of works. Especially with when they nerfed Hex, and when they nerfed like how insta-kill works, like how the Necromancer, the better version of that deck was Necromancer with the tile, and it was like Necromancer with the tile. You put a Boreas on that and like build it up, and then you run clocks, and you're basically just like speed decreasing them the entire game, and then you're locking them out with Necromancer, and then you're running Hunter's Jacket, and then you're running Amulet of Weakness to take away 4 of their squares. It was a really good deck, and but when they changed how insta-kill works with spread damage, so if the insta-kill used to be really good because with Hunter, for example, because with spread damage, the spread damage would have the same percentage as single target damage. And with spread damage, because you're being able to spread it amongst a bunch of units, it was so great because then you were auto killing just waves and waves of units. They decreased that, and now it doesn't work as well. And it was a very niche deck. Like, I didn't see it a lot, but I always admired it. I always thought it was cool. I always thought it was a cool, like, concept that you can just slow out your opponent and make their attack speed just so low. And it just felt like the most oppressive thing. But anyway, Minotaur Empire's Fall. Apparently stunning monsters prevented them from using the abilities. I didn't even know that Minotaur did that because I don't play it enough. But apparently Empire's Fall allowed it to be like a Bombardier, and they're trying to take away all of those abilities. So that is also not going to work. It still works for Frost, and it still works for Max Banshee. But I think that those are the only 2 things that they want it to work for right now. To stun the abilities of monsters. And what's funny about that concept is that the ones that you would want to stun so that they don't use the ability anyway. It's Dark Priest and King Pudding and Virus. It doesn't matter if you stun those things, the ability still happens. Or like a red guy, a red lion. Like, those are the things that you would want to stun so that the ability doesn't happen, and it still doesn't work on those. So I don't play Minotaur enough to care, but that's it. Those are the changes. I think it's good. I think it's not gonna drastically affect the meta. Like, I don't think, like, nobody's gonna play Monk anymore because it's so, like, it's terrible now. I think that it's going to make games quicker. I think that we're gonna have a lot tougher time dealing with bosses now. I think Cultist got the biggest hit. And I'm very excited for what Demon Hunter is. If you look at the picture that they posted, you can actually see Demon Hunter in there. It's there. That's what it looks like at its max form. It looks pretty cool. I'll talk to you guys later.